Richard Nixon was born on January 9, 1913. He grew up in California, studied law at Duke University, joined the Navy in World War II, and began his political career in 1946, working his way up to Vice President of Eisenhower. Becoming a Republican candidate, Nixon lost to JFK in 1960, the closest election of all time. 8 years later, he defeated Humphrey in this 1968 election right around the time of the most controversial war in history, Vietnam.
In 1972, Nixon was very busy internationally. Early that year, he visited Beijing to increase relations with the People's Republic of China. While there, he issued the Shanghai Communique, announcing a desire for open, normalized relations. This successfully opened the People's Republic of China to the West. Later, he visited the Soviet Union, where he signed agreements leading to the signing of the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty talks, better known as SALT. This treaty extended arms control and disarmament measures, and later led to the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, also known as ABM. This treaty limited strategic missile defenses to 200 interceptors each, and allowed each side to construct 2 missile defense sites. Both treaties successfully helped calm the U.S.-Soviet tensions by curtailing the threat of nuclear weapons between the two world superpowers, known as détente. In addition, Nixon created the Bureau of Oceans and International Environments and Scientific Affairs. He established further relationships with the Middle East, avoided the Second Cuban Missile Crisis in 1970, supported Israel in the 1973 raid, and created the Nixon Doctrine, which furnished aid to allies and stated expectations for them to respond by providing soldiers to fight in their own defense.
Nixon favored a policy known as gradualism, which was an attempt to restrict the growth of money supply to rein the economic boom. Due to the threatening nature of the Vietnam War, the U.S. began a process known as Vietnamization, which was removal of American troops from Vietnam. This halted economic growth. This prompted Nixon's new economic policy in 1971, which was a 90-day freeze on increasing wages and prices. In addition, he created the new federal plan, which returned federal tax revenues to state and federal governments. He extended the voting age to 18 through the 26th Amendment, and he founded the Environmental Protection Agency to help contain pollution. He also authorized joint work between the FBI and the Special Task Forces to effectively break organized crime. Although his idea of gradualism was a large success, the Watergate scandal altogether ruined his reputation.
Overall, Nixon's presidency was filled with pros and cons. One extreme success was SALT, which set the stage for the arms reduction pacts and displayed careful diplomacy that brought about the end of the Cold War. On the other hand of the spectrum, the Watergate scandal of 1972 was a major con of Nixon's presidency. Burglars, connected to President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign, were caught while attempting to wiretap phones and steal secret documents inside the office of the Democratic National Committee located in the Watergate building in Washington, D.C. This scandal ruined Nixon's reputation, defined his presidency, and fueled skepticism of political leaders. In addition, leaked videos from the White House revealed that Nixon knew about the inevitable collapse of South Vietnam, but continued to prolong America's withdrawal in order to postpone the collapse until after the re-election of 1972. Involvement in domestic espionage completely damaged his presidency.
Gerald Ford was born on July 14, 1913, grew up in Nebraska, served in the Navy in World War II with Nixon, and attended law school at Yale University. Rising up the political ladder, Ford was elected to the House of Representatives in 1948, was elevated to Vice President of Nixon in 1968, and later became the 38th U.S. President due to Richard Nixon's involvement in the Watergate scandal and subsequent resignation.
One of Ford's most well-known foreign policies is the détente with the Soviet Union. The détente was meant to informally ease hostility and decrease lasting war tensions from World War II and the Cold War. This peaceful coexistence is what prevented the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1970. In November of 1974, Ford and the Soviets outlined a successor treaty to SALT. However, this failed due to differences over limits for Soviet bombs and U.S. missiles. In addition, many critics felt that the Soviets had evil intentions, and therefore the U.S. should not be accommodating their goals. In 1974, tensions rose between North and South Vietnam again. With Watergate conflicts on the home front, all U.S. citizens wanted to move past Vietnam. However, Ford reasoned that the U.S. needed to send military and financial aid to South Vietnam. Congress limited the aid to $700 million, yet it was still not enough. Ford then evacuated all U.S. personnel from Vietnam after receiving word that the communists had overrun Saigon.
Ford inherited impressively difficult circumstances as he was faced with high inflation, energy shortages, and the largest recession America had seen since the Great Depression. An increase in foreign competition slowed economic growth and job creation in the large American workforce. This was known as stagflation. In addition, the nation faced the large energy crisis as crude oil prices increased by 10 times and gas prices doubled. Ford introduced tax cuts and unemployment benefits that helped to create a modest recovery for the economy, such as the Revenue Adjustment Act of 1975, which cut taxes by $9 billion and assured that Congress would limit future spending. Ford also introduced the Whip Inflation Now campaign in America to gain public support, which failed miserably. One of his largest goals was to reduce corporate taxes and help businesses operate more freely. Being a Republican, Ford's domestic policy became more or less governing by veto, as he struggled against a Democratic Congress. He vetoed 66 legislations during his time in office because they conflicted with his financial conservatism.
One of the largest legacies of Ford's presidency was helping to restore confidence in the government after the Watergate scandal. In addition, Ford's presidency was also defined by his pardoning of Nixon. This presidential pardon meant that Nixon would not have to face criminal charges for his actions in Watergate. Many people accused the administration of being involved in corruption, as they thought Nixon chose Ford for vice president with a promise of the presidential pardon. This pardon may have cost Ford his re-election, as he lost to Democrat Jimmy Carter in 1976.